Let's see the 4 panel, the modification panel. With this first option, parents select a closet, we can make children of all selected objects to the closest object in the collection where the active object is. Let's put these branches in local view to work better. Here you can see what the result will be of making each object a child of the closest one on the body branch. Let's delete this parenting to do it again and see how this option works. Okay, now the other branch is not moving, so let's reconfigure it with the parent select to closet option. We select the objects that are going to be children of the branch that is going to be the parents. We put one of its objects as the active object. Then we can press parent select to closet, and each object, the closest object of the branch where the active object is, will be the parent of each of the selected ones. And that's it. Here we see how by moving each parent object the closest of the selected ones moves. The distance is calculated to the axis of each object, so there may be some surface closer to the object that is being assigned as parent. Let's move on to the next option, replace objects with active. This option allows replacing all selected objects with the active object. So, we create an object, or it can also be an existing branch object. The axis will mark the position, rotation, and scale of the active object. It will adjust to what the replaced object had. We have this option to make the replaced objects unique or linked Maya. They can be unique users, and we can modify one by one. This way we can use a single mesh for all objects, and modifications to the mesh will apply to all linked ones. Let's see now that they are linked objects to see how modifying one modifies all of them. We can modify any of them and the modification will apply to the rest of the linked objects. This gives us a very quick possibility of adapting the entire branch shape by modifying only one object. The next option is Insert n objects, which will allow inserting a number n of objects between the two selected ones. Simply select the objects between which you want to insert the new ones. Enter the number of objects you want to insert. You can change it in the side panel n or in the header tool settings bar. And by pressing the Insert n Objects button or using the keyboard shortcut, the objects will be inserted between them, adjusting the scale and rotation to the end objects. Here, for example, we insert one. With the next option, Select Objects, Instance Meshes, we can select the objects that are instances of the active object. Here we see how it selects those that are instances and they are modified together. And with the option Make Single User, we make the selected objects become unique users so we can modify them individually as needed. Related to this is knowing that when we perform certain operations we check this single user box, it will make the objects individual meshes. They are sharing meshes so we can modify them all at once. This applies to operations like replacing or inserting in objects, etc. For example, here replacing objects, we say if they are not unique users, and if we check unique users, now we can modify them individually. The next option is Move to Curve. We can move the selected objects to the drawn curve. To draw the curve, we have the shortcut Ctrl+Y. Once drawn and repositioned, we select the curve and the objects we want to reposition on it. And by clicking Move to Curve, the selected objects will be positioned on the curve. Let's try it again. The option Adjust Scale and Rotation of Intermediate Objects will change the scale and rotation of the intermediate objects of all selected ones. Interpolating to go from the scale and rotation of one end to the rotation and scale of the other end. Now we have the dir branch button that changes the direction of the branch by renaming the objects, making the first object the last and changing all the others in the opposite direction it was in. This operation is something that is done automatically when extruding with the E shortcut from one of the ends. Here you can see if we want to add a new object here, it will change the name to create it at the end of the branch and maintain the correct naming structure. If we position ourselves on an intermediate object like these when we use the extrude operator E, like at the end, it creates a new object duplicating the active one. And it will always create it in the direction of the greater one, giving it the next name to the active one, and adjusting the name of all the other branch objects to maintain the order. This new option resets scale Blocksurfaces Style when active, simply equalizes the scale on the 3 axes. When we have been modifying the scale on the different axes of an object, by applying this it maintains the size but unifies the scale on the 3 axes. If we uncheck it, it will reset the scale of the axes to 1, and this can make the size very different from what we need and have to readjust, losing fluidity in the work. For example, here on the leg, if we reset the scale in the usual way, it resets it to size 1, but if we check the Reset Scale Blocksurfaces Style option, it takes the average of the 3 axes and the scale is closer to what we are looking for, and we have the object with uniform scale on the 3 axes. Let's see in Mirror Mesh a new option called Target to Active. Mirror Mesh, you should know that what it does is add the mirror modifier to the mesh generated with geometry nodes. This makes us have mirror, but it does not work for an asymmetric position. In addition, the mirror, we should add a target if we want it to be done from a specific object. Let's see an example with the head of the stick. In these branches that I have applied a mirror mesh, we're going to delete it to recreate it. We delete all the configuration we had, parenting too. The first thing we would have to do is have the branches with hierarchies so that the initial object of the branch carries all the others. We can use the keyboard shortcut left arrow to position ourselves in the first object of the branches. We press the keyboard shortcut P to give hierarchy to the branch in the direction we want. Okay, the whole branch moves now. If I now added the mirror in the previous way, we would have to keep adding the target to each modifier so that the position from which the mirror is done is correct. Here we can see how we select the generated mesh, go to the modifier and add the target manually. We would have to do this with each object we wanted to add the mirror based on a target. We have the mirror, we're missing assigning the parent to those selected objects. And now yes, by moving the parent object we have the mirror and everything moves perfectly. Let's delete the mirror again to see how it's done now with the new option enabled. Once we have the branches with their hierarchy so that object drags the entire branch. Selecting some object of the branches that we want to have with mirror, then we select the one that will be the target object that when selected last will be the active object. With the mirror target active box checked. And when I do the mirror with this new option, each generated mesh will already have its modifier with the target assigned. Here you can see how the generated object already has the mirror modifier and target to the specified object. So with all the branches that we had selected, all we would have to do is parent those same parent objects of each branch to the active object with the Ctrl plus Alt plus Shift plus left arrow shortcut. And now we have much more quickly all the branches with the mirror configured. We check that by moving the skull we move the rest of the branches with the mirror working. Let's see another quick example of how to apply the mirror mesh with a target on this face. We select all the branches that we want to apply the mirror mesh to. Using the keyboard shortcut left arrow we go to the first object of the branch and give hierarchy to the branch with the keyboard shortcut P. We check that all the branches have their hierarchy and the whole branch moves with the first object. The last one we selected will remain active and will be the target. Here we select the skull that will drag the rest of the branches. With the target to active option checked, we click on mirror on the x-axis. Once we have the mirror, we just have to parent those same parent objects of each branch to the active object with the Ctrl plus Alt plus Shift plus left arrow shortcut. And now we have much more quickly all the branches with the configured mirror. We check that by moving the skull we move the rest of the branches with the mirror working. Next option is mirror branch. This option allows us to mirror branches by generating a new collection on the other side of the selected axis. This is very useful for doing asymmetric poses. With mirror mesh we only had a reflection of the mesh generated with geometry nodes. But with mirror branch we create new branches, new collections, and new generating objects, so we can modify them on the other axis differently from the reflected one and achieve asymmetric poses. And with mirror branch we can change the pose as we please on the other axis. Just like when duplicating branches, if we activate the parent option, it will mirror preserving the hierarchies of the different branches.